Okay, welcome everybody. Today is December 17th. It's been a while since we've been on Zoom together for a special program. We're going to hear from Rabbi Eisenberg, who you all know as the Rabbi of Congregation Rodeph Sholom in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he just returned from a conference in Israel. He's going to share his experiences with us. You'll notice logistically, you've all been muted, which is the way we'll ask you to stay during the time Rabbi Eisenberg speaks. And when he's finished, in about 3/4 of an hour, give or take, then we'll do some Q&As and I will moderate so that everybody isn't talking at once. I suspect you're all going to have plenty to say, but like we do every Zoom program, we just want to keep things going and orderly. So, Rabbi Eisenberg, the floor or the space or the cloud is yours.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Hi, everybody. Good evening. And I want to begin with a couple of words of introduction before I actually start to show you some pictures, some slides from my trip. And first, and I think most important, is to thank our synagogue, Rodeph Sholom, for subsidizing my trip and making it possible for me to attend the Rabbinical Assembly convention. And I'm grateful to the board of directors of our synagogue and the membership for making this possible for me. It was a really very special and unique opportunity for me. It's been a long time since I've been to Israel. And I also want to say that a few of you have already been to Israel at least once since October 7th. Neema has been there. Billy and Lisa have been there. Jill has been there. Debbie and Svi has been there. And I think that may be it for the people I see on Zoom here, unless I'm missing someone. So I just have to tell you that having spent about 8-9 days in Israel does not qualify me to share any insights or knowledge that most of you don't already know. I don't profess any special expertise. I can share some observations with you, and I want to give you a little kind of tour of what I did. And that's, I think, my primary goal. But a few points first before I start showing the pictures. Number one, there were approximately 250 rabbis and spouses in attendance at this convention in Jerusalem. And this is the largest, we were told, the largest rabbinic group since October 7th to have visited Israel as a group or as a mission. And I can't really begin to approximate the depth of gratitude that was expressed to us by our Israeli hosts for having made it our business and our mitzvah to come to this conference in large numbers. They have felt, we all know that the tourism business in Israel has suffered terribly since October 7th, and tourism is a major business in Israel, major industry. So that whenever they have any tourists coming, and especially groups, they are hugely grateful. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the second thing I wanted to put out there is that it's impossible for me to describe the mood of people in the country. I can only reflect on the mood of people whom I encountered and who I saw, and then what I heard about. And when people tell you that the population of Israel is in many ways broken. That is true. Everywhere you go, and I'm going to start with the slides in a minute, you'll see almost everywhere you go, you see pictures of the hostages with the term "bring them home." And on several buildings in Jerusalem, there are very huge murals, pictures of Hirsch, Goldberg Polin, one of the hostages who was savagely murdered. But the picture says, "It's too late for me, but not for them. Bring them home." So I think that's a good opportunity for me to start to try to share. So say a little prayer for me and hope that it works. Okay. So do people see this picture? Okay. So now I think Lisa and Billy, when they came back from Israel, they gave a little talk last year about their experience, and they showed a picture like this, I believe. This is what you see when you first come into the airport. You see my little cursor here. That's the moving pathway, the walkway. And on both sides, you can't really see, I couldn't really capture a good picture of both sides. But on the right side, you see pictures of hostages, right? And then on the left, can you see the cursor? Okay, you can see in the faded distance pictures of the hostages. This is what you first see upon arrival. Now, I decided the convention was held on, let me get to the dates real quick.
Dates are here, Monday, December 9th.
Oh, thank you. Monday, December 9th through Thursday, December 12th. But I wanted to get there a little early and have some time for myself and with a few friends and so on. So I got there Thursday morning of the 5th. I arrived in Tel Aviv from Newark, and this is what I saw upon arrival. I decided to stay for the conference was being held at the Dan Yerushalayim, or the Jerusalem Dan Hotel, which used to be the Hyatt. And it's on French Hill, Givat Tzarfatit, which is right next to Mount Scopus, the home of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Not centrally located, but a beautiful location nevertheless. But the first 3 nights, I wanted to stay more, as one of my friends referred to it as the hood. So I wanted to stay near Baca, the German colony, a place called the first Tachana Rishona, the first station, which was the original Tachanat Rakevet, the original train station in Jerusalem. So I stayed at a hotel called the Dan Boutique. Dan Boutique. And it's a small hotel. It used to be a different hotel, and I don't remember the name of what it used to be. And it's, basic hotel, decent. But I want to show you a picture of the view from my room at dusk. What do you think? Everybody recognize what you're seeing, right? The old city, Ir Atikah, the old city of Jerusalem. I opened my window and this is what I saw. And there's nothing like this, seeing this sight. And to be able to just be in Israel and in Jerusalem and just absorb the wonderful atmosphere and feeling of being there. It's just an incomparable feeling. All those who have been there know what I'm talking about. Okay, now on Thursday, I just used the time to get acclimated and rest a little bit, clean up. And then I met for dinner at a restaurant, at an Asian fusion restaurant. Get that, in that section called the First Station. An old friend who is the director of the pastoral care program at Jewish Theological Seminary, Her name is Rabbi Naomi Kalish. We happened to be on the plane together, so we took a taxi at the same time. We took a taxi from the Navon train station. Oh, I forgot to tell you. To get from the airport to Jerusalem, the way to go is the train, the high-speed rail. It takes 22 minutes. Unbelievable to get from the airport to Jerusalem. And then when we got to Jerusalem at the Yitzchak Navon station, we took a cab from there. I went to my hotel. She went to an Airbnb that she had rented. And then the next day, on Friday, I had made a plan to have lunch with these two lovely people. Okay? And who are they? Daniel Rappaport, MD, and Ta'ir. Ta'ir is about 7 months pregnant or so. More now?
I thought she's doing
I don't
better.
know. No, I don't know. Well, Billy and Lisa know. And we met at a restaurant called the Central Cafe in Baca, and we had a lovely lunch, just catching up. It was a terrific time.
She's doing a month, by the way.
Oh, so she's in her 8th. Okay, doing a month. Okay, so then that night I had dinner with another old friend. Some of you may have heard the name, Rabbi Daniel Gordis, and his wife, Elisheva. And he brought me to the synagogue that he attends on Friday evening and Shabbat mornings. It's called Hakel. He calls it egalitarian. It's not really egalitarian. It's kind of similar to another minyan called Shira Chadashah, and it's egalitarian in the sense that they have separate seating, but it's equal. It's separate but equal seating. You know, it's not like the women are shunted off somewhere remote. And a woman, a female, led the Kabbalat Shabbat service, but they can't lead the Mariv service. Okay. Rabbi Gordis, Danny Gordis, while we were sitting there, pointed out. He said, "You see that guy over there?" Pointed out a guy to me, and he said he is a doctor, an emergency room doctor, and he was brought in after October 7th to identify approximately 100 charred, burned bodies of males. Females identified females, males identified males, and all I could do was look at him and watch while he prayed and sang Kabbalat Shabbat and ask myself, how can anybody go on? How can anybody sleep? You know, it's just, and that's in a way a symbol of what's going on in Israel, even though people are broken. And even though many have seen horrors with their own eyes, they have no choice. They have to go on. There's an expression in Hebrew, ein breira. There's no choice. So Shabbat morning, I walked with a friend of mine, Rabbi Jan Kaufman. She was staying at the Orient Hotel. That's a 5-star. That's a really fancy hotel. I wasn't going to waste $400 a night staying at the Orient Hotel. I stayed at the Don Boutique for $200, a little over $200 a night. We walked to a minyan called Ma'ayanot, which is about a half-hour walk, and we saw a lot of old friends there. It's a really, truly an egalitarian minyan, and there were a lot of people I knew from my old days at the seminary. There are a lot of people who were involved in the Masorti movement who worship there. I don't know of any Bridgeport connections that I can think of, or people that you would know. So then I will say that on the next day, and I'm going to skip ahead to this slide, and then I'm going to go back. Judy's best friend in college, her name was Sue Rosenstein. Sue, I have to admit, by way of a little personal information, when I first met Sue at the Hebrew University Library, before I knew Judy, I had a crush on her.
Wasn't she
I
married to
was-
Frank already?
She was married, but I didn't know it. And I was very disappointed when I found out she was married. And then she started telling me about Judy back in the seminary in New York, because Judy was studying there and at Columbia in the joint social work program. And she said to me, when you go back to when she said, I was in my year of study, my third year at JTS. She said, when you go back to New York, don't go out, don't date Judy, don't go out with her, because Sue was trying to influence Judy to make Aliyah. And she knew that if I went out with Judy, Judy wouldn't make Aliyah, because she knew that I was going to stay in America. And so, anyways, making a long story short, I went back and started dating Judy. And the rest was history.
I wasn't gonna make
Meanwhile, Sue was married to Frank Guilford. They knew each other from Texas, where they both were raised.
UT.
And they were married for a few years.
No, less.
No, they were married for a few
Maybe
years.
2 years.
That's a few years.
Oh.
Do I have to mute Judy? Carol, can I mute Judy? Okay, anyway.
Nope.
New Year's Eve, after Judy and I got married, we were married in November of 1981. And New Year's Eve, we were in Florida visiting my parents, and we got a phone call. Judy got a phone call from Sue. Frank had just enlisted in Sahel in the Israeli army, in the IDF, and he was killed. He was hit by a truck in training
On night maneuvers.
and during night maneuvers, and he was killed tragically. Sue wound up marrying Frank's best friend, Chaim, and they raised 3 beautiful children together. They have how many grandchildren?
5.
5 grandchildren, and they live in a moshav, a settlement called Shorashim, which is in the north of Israel in the Galilee. They have spent many, many hours in miklat, in the shelters, in the bomb shelters. They have, where they live, about 60 to 90 seconds from the time they hear the sirens to get to the shelter. Anyway, they knew I was coming to the conference. They drove down a good 2.5 hour ride from Moshav Shorashim, and they met me on Sunday. This is Sue and Chaim and me. Okay? And we were, I don't remember where this picture was taken. I think it was taken in the one of the malls. This wasn't in the museum, in the library. And they took me to the brand new National Library, right near the Knesset. And if you go to Israel, Lisa and Billy, did you see the new library, the National Library? Anyways,
No, we didn't.
The roof of the library, this is the reading room. The roof of the library is curved. It's curved, okay? The reason it's curved, so it's not a flat, high roof. It's curved from the right to the left, downward. The reason for that is so that anybody in the Knesset, in the parliament, can see over the library and have a full view of Mount Herzl, of Har Herzl, so that they always remember what the origin of the state of Israel is in that respect. The origin of political Zionism with Theodor Herzl, to remember where they came from. This is another view of the reading room, but you can see the chairs set up with the pictures of the hostages. Again, this dominates everywhere. And this is an amazing. This is one view of the stacks of the library. And you see where my cursor is? This is a moving mechanism that moves forward along the rows, if you follow the cursor, and has like a grabber, a robotic grabber that managed by computer grabs these crates of books, puts it on the moving mechanism, and eventually gets it to its destination. It's mind-blowing. The whole thing is amazing. Jude, do you remember this guy Effie from the 70s? We saw him there, and Effie gave us like a little informal tour. I remember him.
Is he volunteering?
He is volunteering as a docent.
Effie Dardashti, very well.
Yeah, he didn't remember me, but I remembered him. Anyway, okay. Okay. Everyone, or I imagine many of you recognize this. So I decided, I think I had free time on Monday before the conference started in the afternoon. So I decided to ride the light rail in Jerusalem. Jerusalem now has a light rail train that goes all the way from Mount Herzl up past Ammunition Hill in Jerusalem. And I took a ride on the light rail, and I got off at the last stop. I took my own walk down to Kiryat HaYovel. I was really in a walking mood that day, so I walked a lot. And then I walked back to Mount Herzl. And this is Herzl's tomb, Theodor Herzl's tomb. One view of it in the front, but the name Herzl, Hey, Resh, Tzadi, Lamed, is also situated on the back of the tomb as well. And his information, his Hebrew name, is inscribed on the right side of the tomb. And one of the things that was remarkable to me was that I was the only one there. I'm not exaggerating. When I got there, there were a bunch of tour buses leaving, but I was the only person at the tomb at that time. And that has never happened to me before whenever I visited Mount Herzl. There are no tourists. There are hardly any tourists. It's empty. The first night of the convention, I'll go back just here for 1 second. The first night of the convention, well, first I attended a learning session, a study session. I wonder if any of you have heard of the poet Rachel Korazim, or Rachel Korazim. She gave a session on the topic was Israeli poetry in the wake of October 7th. And she shared some poems. Carol, I showed you this book from, no, it's okay, from a book called Shiva, which, it's a double meaning, because the catastrophe happened on the 7th of October, which is Shiva, but everybody knows what Shiva means, right? Shiva is the mourning period. So the mourning period began on the 7th of October, but continues to this very day. In the evening, we had like a kickoff program, and we had like a touchy-feely, woo-woo kind of art project that I really didn't get into. Like, we all had to draw a picture of, draw like how you would describe the bridge between where you are now and what you are hoping for in the convention. And I went through the motions, but I didn't get much out of that. It's kind of a woo-woo session, But the next day, I had signed up for, they called them tracks, where we got up very early in the morning. The minyan was at, I think, 6:45 in the morning. And by 8 o'clock, we were heading on buses to Beersheba. And the first stop, now I have to get to my notes, you forgive me. The first stop in Beersheba was in a settlement town called Yerucham. Yerucham is a small, but has grown significantly, and the government has given Israelis many incentives to make it financially attractive for young families, especially, to move to some of these towns. But Yerucham, which is on the way to Bethlehem, to Beersheba, is a settlement town that's very much kind of in the middle of Bedouin society as well. And we visited a organization called Atid Bamidbar. The woman you see here, her name is Debbie Golan. She's the co-founder and president of Atid Bamidbar, whose goal is to promote coexistence and friendship between the Jewish and the Bedouin communities of the desert. And so she had invited this woman here, whose name is Bahita Sajaida, and I probably didn't pronounce it correctly, but Bahita is a Bedouin. She's a wife and mother of many children, but she took it upon herself in her 20s, in her late 20s, to learn Hebrew. So she learned Hebrew fluently, and she then took it upon herself to start speaking to tour groups like ourselves and to spend time giving talks.
Do you have any masks, extra masks?
What's that?
Are you muted, Lisa?
So she showed us the herbs and vegetation of the area, and she spoke fluent Hebrew, and she was just such a warm and friendly presence. And she is very much, again, involved as part of this initiative to build bridges of understanding between the Bedouin and the Jewish community of the area. That's her again. Look at that fit. Look at her. I mean, she's just, I don't know. There's such a spirit to her. She's amazing. From there, we went to the Masorti synagogue called Eshel Avraham. It's called Eshel Avraham because the Torah teaches in Breshit, in Genesis, that Abraham planted an Eshel, how do you translate Eshel? Tamarisk? Eshel. Anyway, if somebody knows, just jump in. Or Beth will look it up on Google for me. Eshel Avraham, okay, for the tree that Abraham planted in Beersheba. And at the synagogue, we had a lunch with a professor at Ben Gurion University. It was an interfaith panel with her, with a sheikh, with a Bedouin sheikh, and with a Catholic priest by the name of Roman Kaminsky, who spoke absolutely fluent Hebrew. In fact, his Hebrew was so flowing and so rich that sometimes we found it a little hard to follow. I mean, it was really amazing Hebrew. It was really a very interesting discussion that focused on the challenges of building bridges of understanding in Israeli society today, especially in light of October 7th. From there, we went to a mosque. We went to the largest Bedouin town in Israel called Rahat, or Rahat. And we visited the main mosque of Rahat, which is called Anur, A-N-O-O-R. Now, if you travel through Rahat, you can't help but marvel, really, at the town, its prosperity. We didn't see really hardly any slum or depressed areas there. The children were so friendly, and they were saying shalom, 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 and the adults were smiling at us. We got such a warm welcome, and when we were sitting in the mosque, listening to a lecture from the sheikh, whose name is Sheikh Jamal Al-Ubra, who is the supervisor of the mosques for the Office of Internal Affairs in Jerusalem. talked about community building and interfaith leadership. He talked about how he cries for the loss of the over 1,200 deaths on October 7th. And he also cries for the loss of the casualties of war in Gaza as well. And very often while he was talking, little kids would kind of interrupt. They'd come into the back of the mosque and they'd make noise and they'd fool around. And, it didn't even faze him at all, right? And then at one point, I heard one of the kids going, Yehudim. It's like a bunch of Jews in there, with kippot. But it wasn't like an anti-Semitic thing. It was like the kids are really delighted to see us. A couple of pictures of the mosque. It's really quite amazing. That's the sheikh right there. This is Amirit Rosen, who is Israeli Masorti rabbi and one of the co-chairs of the convention. This is the rabbi of the Eshel Avraham synagogue. Okay, this is the mosque. Oops, wait a minute. That's the ceiling of the mosque. What I didn't realize that morning is, you have to take your shoes off when you go into the mosque. I may not have made the best choice of socks to wear that day. So I was sitting in the mosque with my yellow submarine socks. Okay. I just hope it wasn't taken in any way as a sign of disrespect. Okay. Moving right along. Now, let me see how I can move to the next. Here we go. Wait a minute. Nope. Wrong. Back. Do you know I would get to? Oh, yeah. Here we go. I got it. All right. The next day, that evening we went to Machon Shechter, which is the seminary of the Masorti or conservative movement in Israel, which has been revamped and renovated, and there is a brand new building there that is absolutely beautiful. And we had a lecture there and a brief Talmud study. And then the next day, by the way, I didn't get very much sleep on this trip, as you would imagine, because the next morning I had to get up for a 6:30, what they call Hashkama Minyan, early Minyan, 6:30 Minyan, because we were going to an area that is called the Otef Aza, or the Gaza envelope. The first place we visited was a kibbutz called Kfar Aza, which is only a mile and a half from Gaza itself, only a mile and a half. And this kibbutz was hit very hard on October 7th. They had approximately 58, I believe, deaths, and many of them among the most horrible deaths, including beheadings, rape, babies brutally murdered. We were given a tour of the kibbutz by, her name was Ayelet, and I don't recall her last name. Ayelet herself, with her husband and daughter, were stuck in their safe room for 36 hours, starting on October 7th, before she was rescued by the IDF. Now I'm just getting to my notes. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and these are quite disturbing. And I believe either 18 to 19 of the kibbutz residences were taken hostage. This is a picture of Gaza from where we stood. So you see how close it is, okay? And this picture doesn't really capture very, very clearly, but there were plumes of black and white smoke because while we stood there, we could hear artillery fire and missile fires, booms. And some people were kind of flinching. Ayelet, our guide, told us, she said in Hebrew, Zeh Shelanu, which means that's our gunfire. That's our artillery. She said, if it were theirs, I'd be running as fast as you. This is one of the houses in the kibbutz. Now, all of them had the number 549 written in spray paint in order to identify them because the general address was 549. If this was to identify them for the purpose of GPS. But here, this was right here, 10, in the Middle East, 10 is the month, 14 is the date. So a week after October 7th, Sahel came in, right? And they were able to clear the house, but also to signify that there was one dead body that they discovered in the house. And either this triangle in black or the symbol of a diamond signified danger of booby traps or explosives in the house. In one of the houses, this was a safe room that had been blown apart. And you can see the bullet holes. This was a whole section of the kibbutz that was obliterated. And an example of one of the homes that the IDF had to actually blow a big hole in the side of the facade in order to gain access to the structure. This alleyway at Kibbutz Kfar Aza housed teenagers and students who lived in studio apartments. Okay, if you can see, these were like studio apartments. This was one of the first targets of Hamas, and Hamas murdered them or took them hostage. Hamas also barricaded themselves inside some of these buildings while they raped and violated the young women right in here. Now, the kibbutz itself had an artillery, had a arsenal room, an area that consisted of several rifles, high-powered rifles, but they were locked up in the arsenal. And they did not have advance warning about Hamas coming. So all they had was they had a series of a kind of a retinue of guards that were assigned to help defend the kibbutz, but all they had was pistols. They didn't get, and they heroically defended the kibbutz, and they probably saved many lives in doing that. Every one of them, and I think there were about 8 or 9 of them, every one of them was murdered by Hamas in the heroic act of trying to save lives. Look what we saw inside one of these students' houses. We just happened to notice it, took a picture. And this was, this is where they were living before they were, attacked. And it says, life is short, break the rules, forgive quickly, kiss slowly, truly love, laugh wildly, never regret what made you smile. This is a typical view of one side of that alleyway where you have pictures of the 5 hostages that either have not been returned or not known killed, who they hope to be returned, right? Doron,
Kate.
Kate, Gali, Ziv,
Ziv.
Emily, Adayin, Chatufim, Ba'aza are still hostages in Aza. Machzirim otam habaita achshav. Bring them home now. And that's the insignia of Kfar Aza, of the kibbutz, right there. Another view of one of these attacked houses and of the hostages. I just took one picture. There were many. There were a few dozen of these similar houses with a poster. You see, Nitzan Lipstein was brutally murdered in this house. One more picture of Aza, and in this one you can see the smoke from the artillery and the missile fire, right? Bear in mind that, again, the depth and extent of the casualties of war saddens everybody. Israel is devastated by the fact that they have to do this or have had to do this. But remember that even nowadays, when the IDF bombs a school or a hospital or something, the report is always that Hamas is embedded in those places. And Hamas is hiding with using human shields. So this is a picture of this area under fire. I took this only because my daughter's name is Rebecca. Okay. Everybody knows about Nova. I believe the number of slain at the Nova Music Festival was 364. 364. This is just one shot. We only had about 40 minutes at Nova. I could have spent 2 hours there. There were whole groups of educational tours of chayalot, of female soldiers, that were brought there to visit. And I watched while several of them would look for pictures of people that they knew that were slain at Nova. All of these memorials were built by family and friends. The government, up until now, has done nothing to commemorate the Nova Music Festival site. This is all done by families. And this is just one small part of it. You see this picture? This again was done by, this is a picture of those who were killed, right? Which the 7th of October, 2023, we will remember them forever with the light and the joy from them will last forever. That's at the Nova Music Festival. Now, after the Nova, now by the way, at the Nova, okay, at the Nova Music Festival, we had a mincha service, and all the rabbis who were there, we all had formed a circle, and we all sang Achenu, Achenu, Kol Beit Yisrael, our brothers and sisters, all the house of Israel, who are Netunim B'tzara Uveshivya, who find themselves in distress and in captivity, right? Hamakom Yirachem, may God have mercy on them. Vayotziem, Mitzara Lirvacha, from dire straits to freedom. Me'afilal Ora, from darkness to light. Mishibud Legula, from captivity and enslavement to redemption, and may it come speedily in our time. From there, I had a surprise. I didn't know that we would be going to Rav Ne'ima's home. where Rav Ne'ima grew up. You see that? Sa'ad. And Gadash, how do you pronounce it, Ne'ima? Gadash? Gadash, I think.
Yeah, Gadash. It's an
Gadash.
acronym for Gidulei Sadeh.
Yeah,
Farming.
it's chaklaut, it's farming. Okay, Gadash Sa'ad, because Sa'ad, the kibbutz right near where we were, is responsible for the production of a significant amount of potatoes and what are some of the other potatoes, carrots, other produce that gets sent throughout Israel, and Saad, as Rabbi Hirsch knows better than any of us, was not even touched by Hamas. One of the reasons is that they were originally supposed to be, their original building was right next to Kibbutz Kfar Aza. But then it was felt that it wasn't really a safe place for them to remain, so they moved across the hill a little farther from Gaza, where they would remain safe, but Kfar Aza would not be safe. And we went there. Let's see here. That's one of the buildings of the kibbutz. And we met with Barnea. Why do I keep forgetting his first name?
Omer. Was it Omer?
Owen.
Oren. We met with Oren Barnea, who is responsible for many of the agricultural efforts of the region. And he and some of his compatriots were able to convince the Tzahal, the army, to allow conduit of farming goods to go through the army lines so that it could be distributed to the rest of Israel. Notice he, among many others, is wearing a pistol in his back pocket. Okay? And he's one of the heroes. Life goes on. Rabbi Hirsch, did you play here? It was probably renovated since. These are the children of Kibbutz Saad. And Ima was probably taking a nap when I was there. Mrs. Leah Katz, Rabbi Hirsch's mother. I couldn't see her. She was taking her afternoon nap. But I didn't even know I would be there. The last morning of the trip, we went to the Masorti egalitarian section of the Kotel. So the section of the Western Wall, the Kotel, that most of you are familiar with, here comes our cat. Yes, please, thank you. That section that everybody's familiar with is non-egalitarian. You cannot have, and many of you know this, you cannot have men and women together there. There's a special section for women, and men and women cannot pray together at that section of the wall. But along the side, down a different set of stairs, you have this section of the original Kotel that is available for Masorti and for egalitarian. And this is where many people hold egalitarian bar and bat mitzvahs when they come to have bar and bat mitzvahs in Israel. This is the gang at the Kotel, putting on our tefillin and getting ready to pray. And you see some people are taking selfies, and of course, I had to take my own selfie. Not a bad picture, right?
Look at that.
Yeah, and I'm usually not so good at selfies, but I think God was with me to take this selfie so that it didn't look so much like a selfie. On the last morning of the trip, we had the opportunity, all of us, of worshiping at the wall. I'm going to close the slide. Second. So I have to say that being together with my colleagues was a very special opportunity to be together in Israel, to worship together, to study together. I find that every so often, since the trip, I got back last Friday morning, and every so often, and again, I don't know Lisa or Billy or others, if you ever find yourself, every so often I find myself getting a little bit tearful, you know, a little bit weepy when I think about going to the Nova site, and when I think about what I saw at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and there were several other settlements that were hit in the Gaza envelope. We just happened to see one of the ones that was hit one of the worst, but many others were hit very, very badly. And yet, I would walk. I took long walks down King George Street and Jaffa Street in Ben Yehuda. I took long walks down in the Baca and German colony sections. I just saw just the street life and the hustle and bustle of daily life in Israel. And if you didn't know, if you didn't know anything, if somehow you just hopped from outer space or from a time machine into the present, knowing nothing about or having known nothing about October 7th, if you knew nothing about it and you went to Israel now, you wouldn't, and if there were no pictures of hostages up, you wouldn't probably notice anything different, at least in appearance and superficially among the people, until you talk to them and you realize how this has broken everyone, how deeply upset and affected everyone is. And everyone will tell you that after October 7th, nothing will ever be the same again in Israel. That Israel now has to become a much more militant state and a militant society. And if you saw people walking around carrying pistols or rifles before, now you see it probably even more so. This is just a necessity of life in Israel. And yet the resilience of the Israeli population and their ability to just continue on, and the Hebrew expression that you'll often hear is lamrot hakol, in spite of everything, right? Lamrot hakol, we still have to anu nitkaber. We'll get through, and we'll cope, and we'll do our best to continue to live life the way we can. It was a very, very special and unique opportunity. I can't wait to get back someday, next time hopefully with Judy, and to get back for a longer period of time. And I would urge everyone, if you can, if you have possibly a way of going, if it's at all possible for you and can find a way to do so, I would highly encourage you to see if you can do it. Carol, I'm turning it back to you to see if people have questions, comments, and so on.
I'll ask if you raise your hand, then I can call on you.
There are a few things in the chat. Did you see those, Carol?
Yeah, I did. I think
I haven't seen them.
they were just clarification,
Okay.
actually. So any comments, questions? I'm sure you all do. None of you are apt to be quiet. I'm looking.
Don't be shy.
My goodness.
That's
This
Phyllis.
isn't a shy group.
That's Phyllis.
Leon,
Phyllis. Hi, Phyllis.
that must be Leon Gould with a question. Okay, Leon.
It's my impression, having been there and read books about Israel, that the Israelis are much more interconnected than Jews in the United States. In other words, a person in Israel, an Israeli, may know another person in Israel that knows a third person, and that third person may know the first person. They're very interconnected, unlike the people in the United States. So when a tragedy like this happened, it's understandable how it affected the entire country.
Yeah, that's well said. There's no doubt about it. Everybody was affected. Everybody knows somebody who was either killed or is a hostage or knows somebody who knows somebody, right? It is, it hits home very, very deeply.
Thank you, Leon. Somebody else?
Or if anybody has been to Israel and wants to share their impressions, or if they differ or see things differently from the way I described it, please feel free. Anybody who has been there, feel free. Lisa, Billy,
Yeah.
Deb, yeah.
You know, I agree with what you said, Rabbi Eisenberg, about Israel, what you see, and on the surface, it looks normal, but below the surface, it's not. You could tell the people aren't, it's not. And we were there in January, after October 7th, and then we were there again in June. And there was a little bit of a change. When we were there in January, none of the Nova Memorial didn't exist. The cars, you probably didn't go see where they have a memorial site where they have all the burnout cars that the Israelis were driving, that, you know, who were killed, but also the little white Toyota trucks that Hamas was driving.
Right.
So it's like a graveyard for the cars and the trucks. So the first time we went, there was none of that. And I also put in the comments that a lot of people don't want to call it the Gaza envelope anymore. They want to call it the Israel envelope. They kind of want to take that back away from Gaza. You know, what strikes me, and it's true what Leon said, I mean, Israel is, you know, political differences aside, you know, all that kind of strife, people disagreeing with each other, which can be pretty intense. It's still, I think it still feels like a family. They feel like a family. And, you know, as evidenced by after October 7th, all the people who were separated by the judicial reform fighting, and, you know, the Air Force people who said, oh, we're not going to go if we get called up, but they all went. Everybody went because they take care of each other. And in fact, in Israel, I've learned that Israel has one of the most innovative populations, and they've done studies. And one of the reasons they say that the people can be so innovative is because when children are raised in Israel, they're everybody's child. So in America, if I see a mother who looks like she's not being nice to her child in the supermarket, as much as I'd like to intervene, or if I see a kid misbehaving, I would never say a word. I would never discipline that child. You know, I would never step in. In Israel, everybody speaks up. They see a child misbehaving, they yell at that child, even if the mother's standing right there or the father. And I don't know, maybe Nima will say it's not really true, but you know, there's this sense. So children grow up feeling safe. And when you feel safe, it's ironic because of the situation Israel's in, but as a community, they feel safe in the country, and that allows them to take chances there. And that's what being innovative is, in some ways, being creative and taking chances. So I just thought that was interesting. And the only other thing I'll add is that what struck me and still does, whenever you see family members of victims of October 7th, I'm just amazed. That's where their resilience comes through, I think. They speak so beautifully and lovingly, and I know they're not happy, but they have this happy demeanor, this loving, almost peaceful demeanor many times, which blows my mind, because if I put myself in their shoes, certainly come, you know, November, December, January, I don't think I'd be ready to do what I've seen so many Israeli people do. Even Rachel Goldberg and her husband, how they went around, they just had such poise and grace. It just amazes me. It's resilience.
the major theme of the convention really was tikva, was hope, and rebuilding of lives, rebuilding of society, the rebuilding of the kibbutzim and settlements around the Gaza envelope. They are all trying to rebuild in their own way, and they're trying to rebuild their lives. It was a major theme. It was. We did attend a hafganah. The word hafganah means a demonstration. Most of the demonstrations are in Tel Aviv, and the Hostage Square is in Tel Aviv. We didn't get to Tel Aviv, but we did. There was a small demonstration near the Knesset that we did not participate in, but we went to because we wanted to stay apolitical. But we were spoken to by one of the parents of not a parent of a hostage, but a parent of someone who was killed on October 7th, who is very active in the efforts to try to secure the release of the hostages. And as everybody here knows, Israeli society is divided when it comes to this issue of, is the government doing enough to secure the release of the hostages? There's division in Israel about that. But I will also say that while we were there, that's when Assad was overthrown in Syria, and the rumor was floating around that he was down, his airplane was downed, crashed. Now I guess he's most likely in Russia, having dinner with Putin or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But also at that time we were hearing the same reports you heard about Israel going in and taking aggressive action in Syria to get rid of the military weaponry, chemical weapons, arsenals, and so on. And everybody was really very happy about that. Everybody felt very, very, very heartened. But there was a lot of worry in Israel. Even at that point, it was just the very beginning, the first few days after the Assad regime was toppled. And Danny Gordis and I were talking about it. He brought me to my father's yard site was on that Sunday before the convention, and he picked me up and brought me to a synagogue to say so I could say Kaddish for my father, and then we were talking about the Syria situation, and we were saying, well, with Assad, this was the enemy that we knew. Now, what's coming up, we don't know. It's uncertain as to what will happen, and everybody's praying and hoping that this extremist jihadist group that is taking over in Syria will somehow moderate itself and enter into some kind of diplomatic talks with the government of Israel. I see Sarah and Jackie. I see that. But Carol, you're moderating. Go ahead.
Yeah. Billy, were you?
Yeah. I just wanted to also comment that it's so odd that the Israeli population does not want to stop the war. They're not interested in a ceasefire at this point. They're interested in continuing. From everything I read and hear, they want to continue and proceed on, to ultimately defeat the cause of all this trouble, which in their view is Iran. And that's something fairly unique, I think, or at least the opportunity now seems to have presented itself, and they want to go after Iran big time.
Yeah, because
Richie, did you hear that?
Yeah, they're on a roll. Yeah, they're on a roll, and they feel optimistic about their military and intelligence capabilities, which is the opposite of October 7th, when, as everybody here knows, all of that broke down for 36 hours. It's like the country shut down,
Thank you, Billy. Sarah, you had a comment?
Yeah, it ties in with what you were talking about. I know here in America, after October 7th, the country rallied immediately around Israel, at least all the Jews did. And now many Jews feel that it's gone much too far, and some of us are embarrassed by what Netanyahu is doing. But that's what I was going to ask you. Did you get the feeling that everybody's rallies there around continuing this, or did you feel that part of the country no longer agrees with it?
See, that's a really good question. And again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm not a critic of Israeli society. I only spent a little over a week there, so I can only give you a basic impression that very well could be wrong. But my sense is, first of all, from what Danny Gordis and others told me, nobody there is talking about a two-state solution. That's only something that is talked about here in the States, right? And even though the people are divided about Netanyahu and his government, there is a very, very strong feeling of defense and support for the army and for what the army is doing.
Right.
I don't think that there is a huge. I'm sure that there are people who are upset about what we would call the casualties of war in Gaza, which are extensive, but and that is something to be noted. But I think that they are very much in support of finishing the war. The problem is that at the same time, they're like two forces that are dissonant when it comes to that, because at the same time, you have a very strong force in favor of the return of the hostages. And, even if it takes a ceasefire and stopping the war in order to get the hostages back. So there's both going on at the same time, and but it's interesting, because maybe that's one of the amazing things about Israeli societies, is that you can have those different kind of streams of approach and opinions that coexist, right? But somehow congeal into a functioning society where people are still very much in support of the state. So I don't know if I'm expressing this clearly, but it's very curious about how that's happening. I mean, I really hope and pray that in our own country, that the different sides in all the political, stuff that's going on in our country, and with the election and with the new administration coming in, I just have to hope that we can still function well as a country. And even though, we're going to agree to disagree about a lot of stuff, but that we can all kind of rally around the idea of being Americans. But Israel has the advantage of being a much smaller country, much smaller. So it's tiny. I think the state of Israel isn't much bigger than Connecticut. I don't know. Who knows this? Somebody knows this.
10 million people.
Yeah, it's tiny, Okay, I know.
Jackie,
I was just going to say, I think it's very difficult being an Israeli living in Israel. And I don't think it's just today. I was there in 1979. I spent the summer there. And I was very taken aback by I wasn't used to it. Soldiers getting on the bus with guns, and everybody accepted it. They're walking around the streets in guns. I found it somewhat unsettling, but they have tremendous respect for the soldiers. They did then, they do now. I think they live in a constant state of anything could happen anytime. So I think it's a very difficult existence, and I have to admire them for sticking together the way they do.
That's true. Israelis, I mean, Naima will back this up. Israelis really know how to have fun. In spite of, right? Isn't that true, Rabbi Hirsch? I mean, there are few people or societies in this world. They really know how to have fun. One funny story I'll tell you. I was sitting, I don't do this often, it's my little indulgence. After the day in Gaza and Gaza, down there and everything, it was very upsetting. So I sat out on the balcony of the Dan Jerusalem smoking a cigar. Did I tell you guys this story yet?
You told me.
Oh yeah. So I'm sitting out there smoking a cigar, and a Moroccan Jewish woman looked like she was in her 60s, but she was on a walker though. Now, by the way, to preface this, I will say that in the Dan Jerusalem Hotel, up until about a week or two before we were there were 1,000 displaced Israelis staying in that hotel alone who still could not go back to their homes. And one other aspect of this whole story is that I had opportunities to talk at the hotel to some of the displaced people who have been for 14 months away from their homes. And this lady is one of them, okay? And I'm just sitting there relaxing with a cigar, and she sits behind me, and I'm thinking, is she gonna start talking to me? Because I just don't want to talk, I just want to relax. And then about 10 minutes later, I hear a voice behind me saying, Chaver. You know what that means? She's talking to me. Okay, friend. And then she says, I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate it. Mafri alecha imanim ashenet grass. Will it bother you if I smoke marijuana?
She was on. That's why she's on.
Oh.
She's on a walker.
Carol, you can't make this up.
No, you can't.
So I said something like, well, only if you give me some. I was joking. I haven't touched this stuff in like 50 years. But anyways, and then I joked. I said, I'm sitting here smoking a stinky cigar. You're asking me if it's going to bother me, if you're smoking a marijuana. Turns out she mixes it with the tobacco in a cigarette because she smokes it for pain, for medical reasons. And she lives alone, and she continues to be displaced, and she's afraid to go home alone. She lives up in the north, she lives near Naharia, Nima. She lives up in the north, That's a whole other side of the story that we do not hear, okay? We don't hear about all the Israelis who still are waiting for the opportunity to go home. One guy I was talking to at the hotel, Orthodox guy who's wearing a kippah, he can't go home. He lives somewhere in the north. His washing machine is broken. Some of the appliances in his home are in disrepair. He's not ready to go home yet. It's
From mortified.
It's no, just from neglect. He hasn't been there for all these months. Nothing works, and he's just stymied. The prospect of going back there and having to pay all this money. He's been out of work, and he's got to pay all this money to get a new washing machine, to get his appliances fixed. So he's putting it off. He's saying he'll probably go back in January. These are stories that are just not being told, folks. They're not being told.
So I have a totally unrelated question because, I'm the Zoom police. Who is 847-831? I'm just curious.
My sister in Florida, Carol.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
great. Okay, interesting. Speaking of that, one other quick thing. When I went in to buy a bottle of water at a kiosk, after I was with Dan and Tair, okay, and we had just left the cafe, and we went to get a bottle of wine to bring to the Gordis's place for that night, So we went into a kiosk, and the guy who was serving, who took my money, was bald. He looked to be in his 60s, and he was wearing a concentration camp tattoo. he was wearing numbers on his forearm,
He seems so young.
right? And they weren't sure about it, but I asked Danny about it later, and he said that's a thing, that children and grandchildren of survivors, of concentration camp survivors, are putting number
that people don't
tattoos
forget.
on their arms.
Their family member's number. They're wearing their
Family member's number as a
Wow.
kind of a living legacy and reminder.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a thing that's going on. I never knew that before, but that's something that's going on now in Israel. Yeah. Anybody else?
Just since October 7th, or that's been
No, not since October 7th. No,
Yeah.
before that. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
Just want to thank Rabbi Eisenberg for a wonderful presentation. It really brought home what Israel is like today, and we appreciate it.
That's very kind of you to say that, Lee. And I'm very, very indebted and grateful to Rodeph Sholom, to our presidents, Debbie and Deb, and the board, and everybody for helping to make this possible for me. For me to be able to connect with Israel after not having been there for many years was an incredible blessing. And I just think about how and when I can get back there. So
Right.
hopefully Judy next time.
I
Yep.
think for us, and I can speak for all of us, I'd like to thank Leon for bringing that up because he stole my thunder. But it was just so wonderful for the synagogue to be able to give you that opportunity, Rabbi Eisenberg, for you to be our representative, different than Rabbi Hirsch, because Israel is home to her and her perspective is different than yours, which is exactly what we would expect it to be. And very likely, we'll have another session where Naima will share, and that will be different. But this was a real eye-opener, I think, for most of us. And I'm really glad that we could do this and host it this evening.
Well, I'm
So
proud.
thank you.
I'm proud of Rodeph Sholom. I'm proud of Rodeph Sholom because our hearts are in the right place, and we are a synagogue that stands by Israel and loves Israel. And we all know that Israel is not perfect. Any nation state cannot be perfect, and that's just too much to expect. But it's still a great country and a great democracy in its own right.
Rodeph Sholom has never been one just to give lip service, and we certainly didn't do that now. So,
Thanks, Carol.
so thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everybody.
Good
And
night.
Thank
take
you.
care. I'll
It
stay
was
on.
wonderful.
I'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody wants to just schmooze informally. That's fine. If anybody wants to talk a little bit.
Rabbi, that was really,
Synagogue mission to Israel.
What?
Synagogue mission to Israel.
Yeah, you want to organize it?
Mm. Uh-oh.
Watch what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for.
No, I'm all for that. Deb.
Debbie will do it.
Enough
Debbie,
going
you'll
on.
do it, right?
Lisa,
Yeah.
Ready next week.
Lisa, I think it's a great idea. We'll be talking.
Yeah, when
Okay,
we were at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, there were a group of people in like teal blue shirts. They were all from the Park Synagogue in Cleveland. People know that synagogue? We went to a wedding there, Rosie Himes' wedding. Remember?
100
I did
years
that.
ago,
I
yes.
officiated.
Yes. I
Huge
remember.
synagogue in Cleveland. They ran a mission. And there are synagogues running missions. You can run a mission even with 20 people.
I don't know if we could get 20 people, but we might as a group consider an alternative would be to hook up as a group with another
That's
group.
right.
Right. You partner with
You can partner with another synagogue or
Either another synagogue or JNF. We might as a synagogue contact a group that's touring regularly.
Yep.
and talk.
All right, do you want to
So-
just mention who locally was there, who some of the rabbis that were there or?
Oh, yeah, sure. So Rabbi Wiederhorn was there from Westport. Rabbi Paskind was there from Bethel and Norwalk. My old good friend, Rabbi Jim Rosen from Bethel in West Hartford.
Reggie was there.
Oh, we hung out together. I forgot to tell you.
You did. Did you,
Yeah,
did
we-
you make music? Did you-
No, no. Well, we had coffee together. And Rabbi David Small from the Emmanuel Temple in West Hartford was there. I don't believe there were any other Connecticut rabbis.
Amy Levin.
Yeah, I think of her more as Chanaton, but yeah, our
Yeah.
Amy Levin,
We all know her. She was our rabbi for a year.
that's right. She was there. And I think, Debbie, that's as far as who people would know, that might be about it. Yeah. It was great.
Well, it was great listening to you tell us about it too. It was a learning experience for us. So thank you.
I hope it was interesting enough.
It was interesting, very interesting.
All right, good.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thanks, guys. Debbie and Tzvi, you're going in February, right? You're muted.
February 3rd,
And you're going for 5 weeks?
5 weeks, yeah.
They land the day we leave, supposedly. We're
Maybe.
fluid. We have a fluid date situation, but yeah, we're supposed to leave February 3rd, so we'll just miss you, Debbie.
Are you able to do that though with El Al because they're booked? Many of their flights are so booked up now because they're the only.
Oh, too bad if we can't get on a later flight. We'll just have to stay longer.
There you go. Too bad.
We'll be playing the violin for you, Lisa.
Yeah. You know, because we're doing it by when the baby is born and all that stuff, so it depends. We might not be ready to leave when we think we will be.
That's why I said playing the violin.
Yeah, I know.
Aren't you guys going to Florida to play golf tomorrow?
At 4 o'clock this morning, we leave.
Wait, so you all staying? Are you all staying together?
Honestly.
Yeah, we have a house in St. Augustine.
No, but Phyllis, are you in Fairfield now?
Yeah, because we're all leaving here at 4 a.m. to get to JFK.
It's like Home Alone.
Yeah, don't oversleep.
It's like Home
Yeah.
Alone. Don't send anyone to the attic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just good to be together. It would be great if we could get to Israel as a group somehow. You know, I don't know. It may be possible for us to do it.
Yeah, we gotta do it before we can't do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Me.
But you know, the average age of our synagogue